Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, if it's Thursday, you should know by now Samkele Maseko is in studio to explain and verify. This evening, we're looking at the history of the Government of National Unity as talks continue around this particular type of a co-governing structure. We want to look at some of the most important points about it and look at what 1994 looked like versus what this form or iteration of a Government of National Unity looks like. Samkele, good evening. It's over to you.
Very good evening to you, Mfundo, and to the listeners. Indeed, the political climate in the country is very tense at this point in time. You did see the economic freedom fighters in Cape Town submitting themselves to the governing party, in essence saying, anything that you give us, we will take. Our condition, Veronica Mente, our national chairperson, must essentially become the Speaker of Parliament. But we're willing to take the Deputy Speaker position. Chairpersons of portfolio committees, you decide, but we would like for Floyd Shivambu to be the chairperson of the Finance Portfolio Committee in Parliament. Previously, the EFF wanted Julius Malema as Deputy President of the country, Floyd Shivambu as the Minister of Finance. They seem to have given up on those particular dreams. He had a meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the ANC, this morning. After the NEC, he has another meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa. So just John Steenhuisen of the Democratic Alliance, the IFP, has already submitted themselves as well, wanting to work for this Government of National Unity, which in essence began in 1994 with that interim constitution. Let's just listen to President Cyril Ramaphosa on what he had to say about the Government of National Unity.
In establishing a Government of National Unity, we would be building on a very rich history of cooperation across divides of politics and ideology. We would be drawing on an experience with which South Africans are familiar and which served our country well at a time of great difficulty and division. 30 years after the achievement of democracy in 1994, we are, as the people of South Africa, once again called upon to ensure that we collaborate and that political parties should come together to forge a common future for our country.
A call there for the Government of National Unity by the President. Is this similar to what we had in 1994? Can this seventh administration be truly representative of a Government of National Unity, or it's just a broad coalition there, Mfundo? It's not yet clear. But what we do know is that the Chief Justice, Justice Zondo, will be sitting in the hot seat of the Speaker, swearing in those 400 members of Parliament. But looking at this particular slide of the 1994 Government of National Unity, clause 88 of the interim constitution, which was established, basically permitted for the Government of National Unity. Basically, GNU broad-based multi-party coalition. It is in essence a coalition, but it brings in a multi-plura of political organizations, pretty much what the President is trying to do at this point in time.
And what many are saying, actually, say this is essentially some sort of a broad-based coalition.
It is a broad-based coalition that the President wants. He models his presidency around the former President Nelson Mandela, but it is in essence a coalition where you sign a particular compact or pact for a period of 5 years, which is one of the conditions that the ANC has put in place. But it has come in a highly racialized and polarized political environment where supposedly left-leaning organizations, your EFF, your MK parties, are seemingly very hostile in working with a Democratic Alliance and a Freedom Front Plus. It also comes at a time where the DA itself is very hostile and refusing to work with an economic freedom fighters and an MK party of former President Jacob Zuma. But if we were to go back to the Government of National Unity in 1994, there was a 5% threshold party electoral support at that particular time. You had to have 5% in order to be represented in that Government of National Unity. It compromised of the ANC, the National Party, Party and the IFP, which is pretty much the compact that Velankosi Nhlabisa of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the president, yesterday announced that they are ready to form part of this coalition with the African National Congress.
Even stating that for them, this is not uncharted waters. They've been here before.
They're saying that they've been there before, but at that time they had a father figure. They had a strong man leading the political organization. Right now, they don't have that particular father figure. Hence, you see, despite the IFP disputing these facts, that there is a contestation between the provincial chairperson of KwaZulu-Natal, Tamintuli, who's touted to be the premier of KwaZulu-Natal, and Velankosi Nhlabisa, the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party. But interestingly, for coalitions or the government of national unity that the president is touting, where the PA is in, where the IFP is in, where the DA is in, subject to the NEC, which is currently sitting now in Cape Town, endorsing that particular move, that no government, no party won this particular election. Let's just look at the results. No single party won a majority in this particular elections. 2 or more parties combined votes to elect a government. In essence, if the ANC and the DA and the IFP were to come together, that puts you to a near 66%, which is a 2/3 majority, which gives them leeway to amend the constitution if they all agree on, which becomes very important because we are moving into an era where there will be electoral amendments to the country on how we elect public representatives, particularly in a coalition era. You look at the framework that is being proposed by the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, which is very similar, which introduces a threshold if you want to form a government. And in essence, SA had coalitions in hung council municipalities back in 2016 local government elections, where Julius Malema contradicts himself today because they voted with the Democratic Alliance back in 2016. In 2019, they voted with the DA again, even though they cautioned it.
Yes, it was a very unique working relationship because they said they're not entering into a coalition back in 2016.
It was a voting arrangement similar to what they have with the ANC today in Ekurhuleni, in Johannesburg, Mogale City, and other particular municipalities throughout this particular province of Gauteng, and also in KwaZulu-Natal before the ANC fired their chairperson of human settlements and infrastructure in that dilapidated municipality, Metro of eThekwini.
I want us to look at the IFP, DA and ANC conversation, at least around particular positions that some of them could be given if they are indeed now to continue and forge ahead post that NEC meeting that's currently underway and forge ahead with the GNU. There's been this narrative that is perpetuated by some around possibly there being 2 deputy presidents. Of course, the Constitution does not provide for such, but today on Explain and Verify, we want to put it to bed. What does the Constitution say about this?
Let's look at this particular issue of the Constitution. Section 91, subsection 1 of the Constitution, particularly around the constitution of the executive cabinet. In essence, cabinet consists of a president, deputy president, and ministers. There is nowhere in the Constitution where it says that there will be deputy presidents. It is deputy president. It is the interim constitution of 1994 elections that permitted for the government of national unity and allowed for a second deputy president in the form of FW de Klerk. That comes into this particular point. Second deputy president position will require a constitutional amendment, and a constitutional amendment, Mfundo, will require a 2/3 majority. The Constitution, over the period of 30 years that this democratic government has existed, has been amended in no more than 9 or 10 times, and that would require political parties to all come together. So as it stands, Velankosi Nhlabisa cannot be the deputy president of the republic until there is a constitutional amendment, and that would require a 2/3 majority. It would require the ANC's 159 members of parliament. It would require the DA's 87 members of parliament, or 89. It will also require the Inkatha Freedom Party's members of parliament, which are roughly sitting at about 18, if I'm not mistaken. I've not truly gone through the actual numbers, but if you've got those 3 political formations, it gives you that particular 2/3 majority, which is why it becomes important for the EFF to also have a very close-knit relationship with the ANC, because if they get these portfolio committee chairpersons and Deputy Speaker position, it also gives the ANC a cushion so that if it goes and gets into trouble with the Democratic Alliance, it can easily have a fallback plan of the economic freedom fighters, vote with them, which would also give the ANC a coalition at that time, because let's just call the government of national unity what it is at this point in time, a broad coalition of political formations working together. It would give them at about 55% of the votes in parliament in order to still govern the country and not have a minority government, which can also be an option if the EFF decides to field a candidate, or MK decides to field a candidate, or MK supports EFF, DA fields a candidate. Other parties, smaller parties, they decide. The Patriotic Alliance has also pledged their support to be in the GNU, demanding that they be given police, home affairs for their policy of Abahambe.
We've already heard what the EFF thinks of those views when people come in and already demand positions.
Indeed, they're screaming right at the entrance of the gate that we want this, we want that. But that is the political nature that we are currently in within this country at this point in time.
I also want us to look at another conversation that's being had now around the quorum. Tomorrow, Parliament is having its first sitting, and the MK party had indicated that they will not be bringing their 58 members of Parliament. Now, let's settle this one. Can they correlate? How many members of Parliament are needed? Do they need a simple majority? What exactly is needed if they are to vote for a President, Speaker and Deputy Speaker?
A quorum in Parliament, I want to get these figures correctly. Majority, which is Section 53 of the Constitution, states that majority is 201 members to vote on a bill. Majority, 201 members to vote on a bill. But at least 1/3, 133 members to vote on other questions. In essence, you need 133 members of Parliament inside the chambers to vote for a president of the country. That is what is required. And that essentially does not need that above 350 members of Parliament, which the MK party ultimately tried to go to the Constitutional Court on an urgent basis and were ultimately denied yesterday evening. And in essence, that is why they have now resorted back to the default position, go back to the swearing in of all members of the provincial legislatures, go to the National Assembly, hence their former Secretary General, Sihle Ngubane, will now form part of that particular delegation, relinquishing his position as the Secretary General. But it is pretty much a mixed salad of what's going to happen within these provinces. You go to KwaZulu-Natal, the NFP is the kingmaker. You saw Ivan Barnes saying that they are moving with the DA, ANC,
and
IFP,
the government of provincial unity.
The government of provincial unity, as they say. In Joburg, we had a government of local unity, as they say. So in essence, in KwaZulu-Natal, it's currently 41 members of Parliament in this government of provincial unity against the 39 or 39 of the EFF and MK party. But if the NFP decides to leave this compact of the ANC, DA, IFP and move towards the MK party, it is a draw, 40-40. But some have questioned, will the ANC have its members of the provincial legislature in check or not? Because it is a secret ballot. And you cannot hide the fact that there is some sort of affinity and love of ANC members and leaders in the province of KwaZulu-Natal to former President Jacob Zuma, whom they ultimately elected into office, whom he ultimately grew their votes in that province by about 1.6 million over a period of 10 years.
No, it's honestly very interesting here, because we saw even just reports that there is a possibility. It seemed like it was one MK member that was quite boisterous on social media saying you might see us welcoming a number of IFP and ANC members. So don't rule us out as the MK party in KZN.
Indeed, the MK party, you cannot rule them out. If you've come to know former President Jacob Zuma in the period he's been in the political realm within the country, he is never short of tricks up his sleeve. He's been avoiding and evaded court for a number of years. What would be 24 hours in politics for the man in Nkandla, where they say the headquarters of MK are in the home of former President Jacob Zuma in Nkandla. Just 24 hours, we will know who will rule KwaZulu-Natal, who will govern the country. But it does definitely look like the ANC is having separate compact deals apart from the GNU. You can clearly see that they are in deep negotiations with the economic freedom fighters, with that closely knit relationship of former President Cyril Ramaphosa and Julius Malema. Had a meeting before the NEC, having a meeting after the NEC. They want portfolio committee chairperson positions, any that they are given. The DA doesn't want to work with the EFF. The EFF doesn't want to work with the DA. It's going to be a mixed mire of a political salad as we look at verifying and fact-checking next week, once we have a government in place after the inauguration of the president next week, Wednesday, at the Union Buildings.
Thank you very much. Samkela says there, 24 hours is what we have. And as they say in politics, 24 hours is a very long time.